The new look Bucks and an improved bench take down the Hawks in a much needed game in Atlanta. Camille and I dig into the details. Who was the hero? What were the changes? And are these long-term fixes for the Bucks? We dig into it next.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. My name is Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day each and every day, and for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcasting network in the industry. A lot to dig into if you're in the Everydayers Club in that Discord after a win like this, Camille. And also, I'm sure there's some confusion, or what is this? So the network rolled out postcasts, which will take place after every game. So those are going to be out there immediately following the game. We are still going to do our post games with Camille and Frank, me and Camille, me and Frank at times. So you're basically going to get to double dip on those, but that's what those are. So there's no like replacing or anything. You're just getting additional Bucks content here. They dug into it immediately afterwards. We wanted to get into our thoughts on this game as the Bucks pick up a much needed win. And Camille, if I seem distracted, did you get the same notification I just did?
Oh boy. What's happening right now?
It pertains to another. Yeah.
Jeff Hafley going to Miami. All right. In Green Bay now.
Well, on a brighter note, so at the risk of saying this is the turnaround and this is a season-saving win, maybe this was a step towards the turnaround. So let's just start with something you alerted me to in the starting lineup change that the Bucks tweeted out. I paid no attention to it. I assumed we were going to go with the same starters. Yep. And I have to put together a recorded package of our starting lineups for each road game. So it was really a good thing that you sent that text to get me moving on that. And then I had to alert Dave of, by the way, there's a new starting lineup. He thought I meant for the Hawks. Like, no, for us. So we were all caught off guard by this. But, I mean, it makes a whole lot of sense. And again, it's not to scapegoat one of the two guards. We talked a little bit about it on yesterday's show. And we also mentioned the 5 that we saw start this game specifically have, albeit a small sample size, but the second best net rating in the NBA for any 5-man group. And after the game, we heard, there was no mention of it, by the way, before the game. After the game, Doc was talked about it by, I believe, Jim Ozarski, and whether or not, is this a long-term thing? And we just could not nail Doc down to an answer on that, but said, we wanted more size, and that was the reason behind this change.
I mean, it's something that we talked about, right? With this lineup, you mentioned just the raw net numbers of this lineup performing the best 5-man grouping on the Bucks, second best in the entire NBA if you're looking at it through that lens. And also just what it does of taking one of those two guards out. In this case, it was Kevin Porter Jr. It slides AJ Green into that spot as your two guard. Talked about it earlier. When he is tasked with defending bigger, taller players, the bigger, taller player normally comes out on top. So with that, having him start at the 2 was like, okay, we're moving in a direction here. But the Hawks are an interesting team because they're actually pretty large overall, just general size they can have on the court at any time. So something that you got to deal with that. But I was actually happy to see the starting lineup change. I think moving Kevin Porter Jr. to the bench also gives him a little bit more leeway to be able to take on more of the shot creation himself without having to worry about passing the ball, because ball movement is still going to be paramount. You're still going to need him to be a guy driving and kicking and creating for others. Like, he still had 7 assists on the night, which you want to see from him. But I think he'll have a little bit more freedom playing in the second unit. Plus, he was on the court with a mix of the starting group at different points in the game too. So I think it's a move that was worth at least seeing how it plays out, because something has to be changed with this lineup, how things have been going.
AJ Green, I was going to, who do you think played the most minutes? But I already kind of spoiled it. AJ Green played 42 minutes.
42.
And This was the first game I can recall. I mean, I quickly went through his box scores just to see like what else really stands out this year. I mean, they were clearly force feeding him the ball and saying, let's get AJ some shots here. 12 field goal attempts in this game. They were all threes. He had 13 field goal attempts in the game against the Hornets on January 2nd, and 10 of those were threes. But his 12 three-point attempts is the most we've seen in a game since that game in New York against the Knicks, the second in those back-to-back cup games against the Heat and Knicks. You got to go all the way back to the end of November for that volume of looks for AJ Green. I'm not saying we should pencil in 12 three-point attempts per game, but it was pretty clear what the message was from here. Number one, Doc talking about the size. We've gone over that ad nauseum. As you just mentioned, AJ Green playing the three is out of position. And there's one other big glaring number from this, why you were very fortunate to win, that plays into the size. But just, it makes more sense to have Ryan Rollins and Kevin Porter Jr. spaced out like that. I think we saw another added benefit we'll get to in just a moment, but also it opens things up for AJ to say, okay, the open looks are going to AJ, and we have one point guard on the floor. We have Giannis. We have Kuz that can be point forward and bring the ball up the floor so Giannis can get in his spots. But our two-man game is Giannis and AJ, and we'll see if Ryan can catch somebody napping or Ryan gets some open looks. This opens up that clarity, and I think that's a big part of what we saw. The other notable thing from this game, Camille, was the non-Giannis minutes.
Yeah.
Were not a disaster. And more than that, they were good outright. Like I kept track of everything here. So that first stint with Giannis on the bench, the Bucks were up 13-11 when he left. They outscored the Hawks 25-12 from that point forward until he returned. And they shot better than 50% from the field. They were 50% on their threes. They had one turnover in that sequence. They protected the ball, not too many fouls. They even got to the free throw line 4 times, and they shot the crap out of the ball. The next stretch, they basically, because you only had 2 instances of non-Giannis minutes, they basically kept you in it. And I think this is all we're looking for. It doesn't have to be plus 13. That next stretch that went mid-third into the fourth quarter, they were -3 to Atlanta, but they were still efficient offensively. They just turned the ball over too much. So if you can consistently just say, and by the way, they finished plus 10 with Giannis on the bench, shot 53% from the field, 46% on their threes. Half of their turnovers came with him off the floor, which I'll take. Plus 10, you love it. But if even that last segment, if it's just like, this makes sense now. We know Bobby is our go-to guy that we're going to look to for offense. Kevin Porter Jr. is the point guard and the organizer. And we'll get to the other revelation from this game. If we can just be like -3 in these minutes where he's off the floor, even something like that, that is a massive win. And that may be the biggest thing that helps push this team into the next gear.
I mean, it's been said for years now. It's just that this particular season, it feels like an even wider gap with the on-off numbers for Giannis. But bare minimum, just don't trick it off. Like, whatever the margin is when you come into the game, don't trick it off. Don't be -10 in those minutes with Giannis off the floor. Like, you can give him a couple of points here and there, but you can't bleed points when he is off of the floor. So to see that grouping in the first stint there go plus 13 was like, okay, you actually gave yourself a little cushion there going ahead. And the next segment wasn't as great in the second half, but they did enough. And Doc made a little change to the rotation as well. Those who are watching on YouTube can probably already guess if they're looking at what Justin's handle is for this particular game. But Pete Nance off the bench, the Bucks might have found something with putting him in there. But the question that I have too is, at the expense of Gary Trent Jr. is the interesting part to me.
Gary Trent Jr. did not play. Not on the injury report. The only 2 guys on the injury report were Alex and Torian Prince. So Gary Trent Jr., a DNP CD, the first time, I believe this is his first, did not play coach's decision since November of 2022 when he was with the Raptors. So almost 4 years that we've seen it. But as we talked about a little bit on yesterday's show, the numbers warrant that type of decision, at least in the short term. So those two guys and what you saw from Pete Nance, we'll get into coming up next. Also, I mentioned, look, there's still one thing that needs to be addressed, and this is the elephant in the room, and it's quite frankly why we had a game today with the way the Hawks started shooting the ball and the way the Bucks consistently shot the ball. We'll dig into that coming up next on Locked On Bucks. Well, new year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. There is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. You'll love how Quo makes everything simple. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal, and it works from your phone or computer. You can even keep your existing number. Plus, Quo's smart AI tools automatically logs calls, summarizes conversations, and highlights next steps, so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnba. That is quo.com/lockedonnba. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. So yes, Pete Nance inserted into this rotation. And there have been a few vocal everydayers and Bucks fans out there on socials that have been leading the Pete Nance charge. And, you know, Camille, I think even the last couple of games, we all came around to, look, I may not see what others have seen. I'm not saying like Pete Nance is terrible, none of that, but like we haven't seen enough to know one way or the other. Just, okay, he can shoot. Granted, it's Malcolm Brogdon in terms of the sundial timing of the three to load it up, but he can do some things, but we just don't know one way or another. However, when you're 17 and 24, as we talked about on yesterday's show, like now's the time, right? Okay, let's see what this guy can do. Maybe this guy can give you something. And that's what happened. I can't help but wonder, do we need an investigation from Pablo Torre to try to figure out which of these accounts is Doc's burner on Twitter or Reddit? Because everything that fans had been calling for on those two platforms, we saw all of it, right? We talked about Gary Trent Jr. and his struggles, and by the numbers, he had been one of the more inefficient players in the league, not just on the Bucks, in the league. We didn't see Gary Trent Jr. play in this very important game. Pete Nance, another guy of like, let's just try something new. You saw Pete Nance play for 15 minutes, and he was what, plus 16? I mean, he was incredibly positive. 2 for 2, led a fast break, scored, knocked down a 3, had some pretty nice defensive plays as well. So Pete Nance, valuable. The new starting lineup that we talked about, all of it, the non-Giannis minutes and the way they staggered things, it was almost as though Doc Rivers saw all the comments and said, okay, let's give it a try.
Right. And in addition to the stats, because like even I don't think the box score fully reflects like the impact that Pete Nance was able to have on this game while he was in it. Because in addition to the couple of rebounds, a couple of assists, the steals, a block, he just played with really good pace throughout the game. Like he was rolling hard.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I mean,
cutting hard to the basket, like running the floor. To some points, I'm like, reward the big man with how hard he is running.
Well, and it's one of the things that like you just take for granted until you see somebody do the little things. You're like, oh yeah, that's why we haven't seen this or this. Like he had a couple of those short rolls and just plays where movement off the ball it creates space. And with that comes your pace, that it just creates those openings for AJ Green to get up 12 threes and other clean looks.
Yeah, and then the pace, like, I think a lot of people always think of pace as like, well, how quick did you get the ball up the court? But it's like also how you're moving in the half court, how you're moving in your sets. And man, he was playing with purpose during his minutes out there. Love to see that with him in the lineup. And Gary Harris as well. The two of them played 15 minutes off the bench. The raw stat numbers for neither player are eye-popping, but they just provide really solid, valuable minutes for this team where it's like it's just a floor that is set. It felt like when those two were in the game that the Bucks were not going to drop past, and that floor was like decent, like, and that's all that's needed, just decent. And they were able to do that today. But the question is, again, is this stackable? Is it something they're going to be able to replicate in future games? Because we've seen them have a good game. The Lakers games, like, oh, the non-Giannis minutes were great against the Lakers. Can they bounce back? And then it did not show. So like, this was great. Now my question is, what does it look like in the Bucks next game going forward?
Which, oh, by the way, is against the best team in the league and the reigning champion Oklahoma City Thunder. So you've got your work cut out for you. You know how much I love the plus minus in any game. But I mean, this was a game where I think, I'll look at the plus minus and say, you know what? I think that does do a good job of articulating most of the story. Pete Nance was plus 13. Gary Harris was plus 10. Bobby was plus 6. KPJ was plus 3. AJ Green was plus 14. So that was the big difference is, oh, wow, like we're used to seeing that in the inverse of negatives and beyond, 3s and 6s for Bobby and KPJ. That, okay, you found a nice structure here. I am a little curious. I would assume this is your starting lineup go forward. But the fact that Doc Rivers did not want to commit to that, we'll just file that one away and keep tabs on that. But there was one glaring issue in this game yesterday against the Atlanta Hawks that has been persistent all season long for the Bucks, and it has only gotten worse as this season has developed. This is the number one thing that is going to prevent the Bucks from righting the ship and going on any type of run and, moving back into the play-in tournament, which they're only a half game out of it as we speak now with this win. But until this singular issue is cleaned up and addressed, the Bucks are going to be the Bucks that we saw through the first 41 games of the season. So we'll tell you what that is, and I suppose how to fix it, right? If there is a way, coming up after this on Locked On Bucks. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. So instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with local TurboTax experts in person or connect online. They'll handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and get work deductions done every single step of the way. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get the updates right within the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver, gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it for you. And I can vouch for this, having used TurboTax each of the past few seasons, especially last year. Self-employed income coming in, W-2s as well. It's always been a nightmare, and I just used the TurboTax app to chat with that expert, give them all the information they needed, and they did the work for me. So this season, stick with your gut, stick with TurboTax, and do the same thing that I do. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. So a lot to throw out there, the chum in the water for our Discord, Camille. And as we've mentioned a couple of times, You can still sign up for the Everydayer Club, get access to that Discord channel we have talked about. You also get ad-free episodes of Locked On Bucks. Doesn't matter what service you use. You can get them on Apple, Spotify, whatever podcast app you're using, and get into that discussion on Discord as well. You can still join and you can sign up. Find the link to do so in the show notes of today's episode. So the one thing that made this a game, the Atlanta Hawks missed 21 straight threes to start this game. It wasn't until, the final 90 seconds of the half, if not even later, that CJ McCollum finally rattled one in. So they finished the first half 1 of 21 on threes. They finished the game 12 of 42. So they had hit 12 of their final 21. And, when we got to halftime, this is one of the things I mentioned is, okay, you're up, 16 at the half? You've played pretty well. New starting lineup worked. Your non-Giannis minutes, the first go-round, as we just mentioned, it was, plus 13 that you outscored him by? Things are looking good, but let's just keep an eye on a few of these things. The Hawks are bludgeoning you in the paint, and they would go on to win that 52-38. You've kept them in check in fast break points. And coming into the game, the Hawks were number 1 in points created in transition. They love to get out and run. You did a good job of limiting that. You got to assume that number is going to start to change just a little bit. But 3-point shooting and shot attempts. The Hawks, again, 1 of 21 at the half. They go 12 of 21 in the second half. Shot attempts, though. True shot attempts in this game. The Atlanta Hawks dominated the Bucks. 106.5 to 90 was the difference in true shot attempts. And the Bucks on the season now are losing that category by 4.5 per game. The only team worse is the Washington Wizards, and the Bucks are trending in the wrong direction. The Wizards are trending down. The Wizards at one point were -7. It's -5.2. They're now within striking distance of the Bucks. So another bad week, and the Bucks are going to be last in the league in terms of opponents getting more true shot attempts. That is why this game came down to the final possession, and why we all felt like, is CJ McCollum really about to beat the Bucks for a third time this season?
In a different jersey this time.
I mean, that's why it was. If you're going to get 16 more bites at the apple, as the Brewers would say, than your opponent, with, offense in the modern NBA, there's a pretty good chance you're going to outscore your opponent. So until that number starts to move closer to even, the Bucks are going to have a big consistency problem.
Can you imagine what some of these offensive outputs for the Bucks could be like if they were the ones winning the shot, like the true shot attempts here? When I look at the raw numbers here too, second chance opportunities that the Hawks just kept creating for themselves. Even if you just look at the raw field goal attempts, the Bucks had 79, the Hawks had 96. The Hawks had 14 offensive rebounds in this game. 14 offensive rebounds for different chances to reload, other shot attempts. Again, it's an area for the Bucks where they have to be better. And even when the Bucks ran out, the jumbo bench lineup where you had Kuz out there with Nance, with Portis, and then you had the 2 guards, they were still bleeding some of those offensive rebounds where it was okay, you guys are too big right now for this to be happening in the moment. When Giannis was on the court, Giannis was really, really attacking the glass. And this was one of the first games I felt like since he's come back from injury where he was this aggressive on the glass. Finished with 17 rebounds in this game for the Bucks. But it's an area where everyone has to chip in to help on this situation because the Bucks just tend to bleed those offensive rebounds and second chance opportunities for other teams. And it has to be cleaned up for them going forward because everybody's not going to have a cold shooting night like the Hawks did. But in the Bucks' favor, like it has been throughout the season for the most part, when the Bucks did shoot their limited amount of shot attempts, they knocked them down at a pretty high clip. So the efficiency for the Bucks was pretty good again for them today. In the second half, the Hawks shot 55% from 3. Yeah. Luckily, the Bucks were able to shoot 50% from 3 and knock down 8 of their own to kind of at least keep some closeness there. So Not a perfect game for the Bucks, but a step, it felt like, in the right direction. But they need to continue taking more steps to improve on areas of weakness, and also steps to improve on consistency from game to game.
Yeah, I mean, the second half numbers in terms of efficiencies were pretty even with these two teams. So you just look at what the difference was in in the second half score. And I think that shows you, look, if it wasn't for the struggles that the Hawks had to shoot not only the three, but just shooting
Period.
the ball in general. Yeah, I mean, neither of these offenses were crisp to start things. If it's not for that, it is incredibly likely that you lose this game. And, you know, all the things that we talked about of a new lineup and everything else, it takes on more desperation
Mhm.
if that's the case. So, yeah, these are areas that it just has to be fixed if you are the Bucks, the true shot attempts. And, you know, the way to go about that, I mean, I've had a few people reach out to and ask the same thing of, okay, how do you fix that? I mean, yeah, on the one hand, it's easier said than done of, yeah, I guess what do you do? Like, it's easy to say, well, just try harder and give more effort. But, you know, I think it really comes down to, there is one thing that the Bucks really since 2021 have basically ignored. And even before that, that was a blip, you know, for a 3-year stretch or so. And that's offensive rebounding.
Mhm.
And the position that the league is in and where things have headed, the trends that we've seen are that you just can't afford to do that any longer, that you have to lean in to being a team that is getting additional possessions. Like, if you're not going to be an offensive rebounding team, I think what we've seen is you better be forcing a ton of turnovers and using that to get in transition. Because if you're just going to say, well, we're not going to foul, and by the way, the Bucks were doing quite a bit of that early in the season. But if
Yeah.
you're just going to say, well, we're not going to crash the glass because we want to get back on defense, and to that I would say, I mean, the Bucks are still giving up, I believe, the 5th most possessions in transition, but they're number 1 in preventing points added in transition. So, like, you're still giving up a ton of those possessions anyway. I understand your defense has been good, but it's not like not crashing the glass has helped the volume of attempts that the opponent is getting. So if you're not going to crash the glass and you're not going to be this aggressive defense that forces turnovers, you're going to be in trouble because you are going to lose the modern math every single night. And that's what we've seen.
And it's like I said on yesterday's show, where it's like, if you look at where the Bucks are when it comes to them on defense forcing turnovers, they're doing so at a clip you haven't seen in Milwaukee over the last few years. But the bar was the floor because the Bucks have generally been amongst the bottom 3, bottom 5 when it comes to defensive turnovers, how many they can get on defense and get out there and run. So it's an area where they've shown improvement. But again, it's not improvement to the point where you're like, wow, they're top half of the league or whatever the case may be. So like, there's still opportunity. You see certain guys in the lineup, like Kevin Porter Jr. is a passing lane player. Like, he is going to try to get in there. Ryan Rollins tries to use his lane. So just those guys in particular being really aggressive. Even Kyle Kuzma with his defense. Shout out to him, by the way, for his defense to end the game against CJ McCollum there without fouling, just making it a very tough situation for CJ. So those guys got to continue to use their length in situations to try to force those turnovers. In addition to, as you said, just try to crash the glass. Like, for a team that has a goal to shoot more threes, you would think that offensive rebounding would also be part of the calculus, because again, those are some of the best 3-point looks you're going to get on the reload. So it's an area where it's like, you don't have to just jump out here and be the Houston Rockets or anything like that, but can we have a little bit more emphasis on it going forward? And on the other side, rebounding to end possession so that the other team
Yes.
isn't getting the second chance opportunities as well. Like, if you can end the possessions, then you have a little bit more leeway of like, hey, we're not creating as many offensive chances for ourselves, second chance, but at least we're not also granting them. Like, you can't do both. You can't give up the defensive rebounds and then also not get your own offensive rebounds. Like, it just creates a numbers game that's going to be very, very hard to compete with.
So looking through these teams that are generating the most, the largest difference in your true shot attempts per game. I mean, if you want to look at it by the teams that are scoring the most with your points per game production, it's 2 of the top 15 teams in scoring per game have a negative differential in true shot attempts out there. If we look at it just in terms of offensive efficiency, I mean, it's not cut and dry that, oh, well, the best teams in the league are the best teams at limiting that. But for the most part, it's the teams that are very bad offensively, they're nowhere near the top. Like just looking through, let's see, how many teams do we got here? Looking through the top 10, you've just got one team that is in the bottom 10 in that difference, and that's the Toronto Raptors, bottom 10 in offense at 21. They're fourth best in generating difference between true shot attempts and the opponent true shot attempts. But again, Toronto hasn't been an efficient offense this season. Like they're scoring by creating those turnovers and using that in the half court. They've struggled. But the other teams, Houston is number 2 in difference. They're number 4 in offense. The Knicks are number 3 in difference. They're number 3 in offense. The Celtics are number 5. They're number 2 in offense. Thunder are number 7. They're number 5 in offense. Same with the Cavs. So it seems to be pretty much tied at the hip of, hey, you want to know how to be really good and at least be above 500 and have a good offense? Get more shot attempts than the opponent. And, you know, like that's where the Bucks currently are, that this remains an issue, second worst in the league. And right now, even after this result, they are number 23 in offensive rating and number 19 in defense. I mean, we're beyond the midpoint. You, me, Frank, we all talked about it before the season. None of us thought the defense would be better than the offense this season. And not only that, that the better of those two would be 19.
Yeah. Yeah. Unexpected to me. Like, here's the thing with this team, right? We just laid out the case of like, here's an area where they need to continue to improve. And it is very, very true. Like, especially for this team to try to make any noise, you know, come April or May. Right now, they just got to find ways to win consistently at this point, where it's like, again, when I mentioned before, hey, we haven't seen the bench unit play this well since the Lakers game. I would just remember, well, we haven't actually won a game since that Lakers game when you did have positive bench production here. Like, there are avenues for this team to get better. Now, one could question, do they have the personnel to execute in the ways that we're talking about consistently? I think that they have the personnel to execute it better on a more consistent basis than what we've seen so far this season. But I don't think they have the personnel, like I said, to jump up to the top 5 in the league or anything like that. But there's pathways for them to be better in those areas. And again, given the efficiency of this Bucks team, getting more looks at it is just going to do them positive things. So they got to try to continue to increase that, because again, efficiency wise, this Bucks team is still top 5, I think, in efficiency in the league right now. So they got to continue to lean on that.
Yeah, I mean, it should be pretty self-explanatory, but you got to win. Now let's see if you can keep the ball rolling here, albeit against a very, very good team in the Oklahoma City Thunder on Wednesday night. And that is a late one. We get 2 straight 8:30 tips in Milwaukee. How fortunate are we? The Bucks and the Thunder on Wednesday, and then the Bucks and the Denver Nuggets on Friday. No word yet on Nikola Jokic. He is reportedly nearing a return, and the last I heard, the Nuggets were expecting him back sometime around the last week of January, which we would be going into as of Friday. So we'll see if that changes Jokic's status for that game on Friday. Really quickly, as we wrap up this one and the look back at the game against the Hawks, we mentioned on yesterday's show and didn't have time to get to it, but Rajon Rondo on Kevin Garnett's podcast. Did you watch the whole thing, or did you just see the Bucks specific portion?
I just saw the Bucks specific clip with him talking about,
and that's frankly the only part of importance to our audience.
Yeah, that's the only part that I saw. And I was like, I laughed at first with KG being like, oh, I forgot, it's not just us two talking. I got to kind of reword the question here so that Rondo could give a more media friendly answer of what he thought was going on with this team, with Giannis and the depth.
Yeah, I mean, that was the most interesting part, where KG basically asked him, Hey, do you think Giannis's expectations are just too high right now? Do you think this roster is actually good? Is essentially the question that was asked to him. And I don't know if Rajon Rondo was coached at all or he's just got it in him that he kind of gave him a look too of like, I shouldn't answer that. And that's where you mentioned KG, like, oh, yeah, I forgot it's not just the two of us talking. But the one thing that did stand out to me, and we talked about this a little bit, you and I did, is, again, we're not turning this into, do they need to make a coaching change or any of that? I'm just stating why. When people say, why does this keep happening? It was very clear. Those two guys, and they are not alone, those two guys revere Doc Rivers.
Mm-hmm.
He is a very pro player coach. And we heard it again. He talked for about 15 minutes before the Hawks game. 10 minutes of that was reflecting on what is going on in society, the importance of playing on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and those types of issues. It's all stuff that matters to players. And I've talked about it before too, in that, obviously not every single player loves him, right? I'm not going to say he and James Harden are the best of friends, but you just see so many guys that interact with him that are not on his team during the course of a game. You hear Rondo and Kevin Garnett talk about him. He has JJ Redick too, people that are not fans of his, just as any of us do. But this is ultimately a job just like we work jobs. And it's obviously very different in terms of the pay and the expectations. But, you want to go to a job like, yeah, I like this guy, or I like being around these people. Not so much I cannot stand this person and I don't want to be in the same building as them. And there are some of those, but that is largely how Doc Rivers is viewed by players. And that is the reason why we're like, how does Doc keep getting jobs? Well, because of stuff like this, because of how Rondo talks about him, because of how KG talks about him, and other former players. Tyrese Maxey has said similar things, even though maybe Doc has taken liberties with just how much he saw in Maxey and Shea and others. But all of these guys across many generations, most of them have that same feeling towards Doc.
They do. And honestly, I've been on record saying it. When Doc Rivers was hired, I made mention of the fact, like, hey, if you would have told me right after Bud was fired that Doc was going to be the coach, I would say, why are we doing this? We have Doc at home. Like, what are we doing? Like, we're not really getting new strength for this new head coach. But the strength that Doc Rivers did bring in his time of coming onto the franchise, when you had Damian Lillard and Giannis and Chris Middleton, is him being that good people person. Really good at managing personalities, expectations. And I thought that he was a good coach for the locker room, of adjusting to, it's not just Giannis's show right now. It's also Dame's show here. And how do we also use Chris, but injuries with Chris, so on and so forth. That piece didn't work out. But then it was still, how do I continue to manage Dame and Giannis? And this year, where the star is just Giannis, now it comes down to, how are you able to manage this locker room, getting these young players to buy into what their role is, and also getting the most out of your superstar at the same time. And at times throughout the season, it feels like the test has been failed. But there are other times in this season where it's like, okay, we're seeing something happening here where it's like, let's continue to see if there's anything going with this. But that's the Doc Rivers experience so far in Milwaukee. And like I said, I think overall it hasn't been good enough for Doc this season. But the hope right now is, while he's still, at the helms here, that the Bucks can figure out a way to turn it around.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not going to speak for Doc. He would also say the same, that it has not been good enough. But we'll see now if, it's always darkest before the dawn with this schedule in front of them. Is this where the Bucks somehow start to crawl out of this hole that they've dug themselves? Again, 3 straight at home. That's the big thing. But it's the Thunder, the Nuggets, and the Dallas Mavericks who aren't playing too terribly right now. But you're 18-24, so just a half game back of the Hawks, and you're up on them in the loss column. And not only, I believe we've seen more change in those 7 through 10 spots, because I'm pretty sure Cleveland's loss to the Thunder dropped them back into the play-in tournament. So we'll see if not only the Bucks can keep this going, if the Hawks are going to continue this slide, as that's now 4 straight losses. And, we talked about where they were on December 1st to where they are now. It's in a much worse spot been where the Bucks are. So we'll start to preview that matchup with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Cannot wait on our show coming up on Wednesday. And then, of course, the recap of that game as well. We also want to remind you, as always, we thank you for tuning in to today's show. Make sure you subscribe and follow, especially this time of year, so you get the instant notification when we do go live around a trade deadline or anything else that may happen with this team. You'll get instantly notified when we have those live shows on YouTube if you subscribe and follow along, and same on your podcast feeds as well. If you never miss an episode, we already referenced some of the perks, but the Everydayer Club is built for you. You get ad-free episodes of this show and access to the members-only Discord. You can sign up with the link that's found in the episode details of today's show. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make that your second listen, NBA Game Nights on Locked On NBA, and it's a Camille hosted show this go round, so make sure you tune in to that one. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.